On February 14, 1989, Salman Rushdie was telephoned by a BBC journalist and told that he had been sentenced to death by the Ayatollah Khomeini. This would be the first time he heard the word fatwa. His crime, writing a novel called The Satanic Verses, which was accused of being against Islam, the Prophet, and the Quran. In a new memoir called Joseph Anton, Rushdie tells the extraordinary story, and Salman Rushdie joins us now. Good morning.
Hello. How are you?
Welcome.
Thank you.
So this is the way you start the book, and that's where I'd like to begin with you. I can't imagine picking up the phone and hearing these words. A reporter is calling you. You have no sense that this is coming, do you?
No. No, and it's Valentine's Day.
On top of it.
On top of it. So it's a very strange Valentine to get first thing in the morning. No, it was a terrible moment. And one of the things we all knew is that, you know, the Iranian regime was quite capable of carrying out threats like that, you know. So it was, I mean, it was ridiculous what you do in those circumstances. You know, I remember running down and locking the front door. I thought that now it's safe, you know.
Exactly. How do you do that?
Speaking of scary movies, it's almost like you're in a scary movie.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things I've often thought is that I fell into a kind of into a narrative, and I fell into a kind of thriller spy story. Suddenly, there's men with guns in the kitchen, you know, and
you needed a safe house almost instantly.
Well, I mean, one of the strange things, yes, because the police said to me that they didn't want me to stay in my own house, and I'm not sure. I mean, sometimes looking back on it, I think I may have been wrong to agree to that, but it did then mean I had to find all these places to live because they weren't offering me any. I mean, the government, often people think that there are these things called government safe houses that you've read about in spy novels.
Yes.
Never saw one.
Can you talk about the real moments of threat when you felt like your family was in danger? I know your translator was killed, and so was your Norwegian publisher.
Well, he survived, thank God. He was shot in the back, but he did live. No, I mean, and there was a moment when it turned out to be a series of mistakes, but there was a moment when I thought they might have kidnapped my son, who was then only 9.5, you know, and yeah, that was a terrifying moment. There was one moment when I was taken to the intelligence service, you know, that James Bond building that you've seen in the movies, to meet Judi Dench. And they said to me that they believed that there was that there was an assassination squad in the country, they thought, and B, that they were worried because this group was so confident that they'd given a time deadline, that they said they were going to do it within 90 days or something. And
did you want to ever take it back?
No, but
would you have?
No. I mean, I think, you know, actually the truth is I found myself becoming very obstinate, you know, and I think writers are very stubborn. I thought, the hell with you, that's what I thought, you know, and I think at this end of the story, I'm happy that novel is now, it's back on the shelf as a novel, you know, it's no longer like a hot potato. And I think particularly for younger readers, I think if you're like, this happened 25 years ago, you know, and I think if you're somebody 30, younger than that, this is something that either happened before you were born or when you were, so it's not so much a factor, you know, people aren't bringing that baggage to the book anymore, and they're just reading it like a book.
I think one of the reviewers in the New York Times called it your post-fatwa life, where because of your notoriety, you really became the toast of the town, and you were invited to all sorts of parties, and everybody was interested in talking to you.
You know, I got invited to stuff before as well. But no, I mean, I think one of the things I felt at the end of the thing was that it was, in a way, it was very important to show people that things are better now. You know, because I think the last problem that you have to overcome is other people's nervousness. You know, and so I had a deliberate policy of like go to places where there's photographers, so just show people that it's okay now.
Nervous to be around you?
You know, I was surprised by how little it happened. It did occasionally happen, but actually very little. There were one or two times, like in a restaurant, where somebody said, "Should I be sitting next to you?" And I thought, well, you know, I'm sitting here. You know, if you don't want to sit there, leave.
Is that like a long tunnel? I mean, can you personify this for me? Was it like just walking through a long tunnel and going, gee, I hope there's some light at the end of this?
Well, I think one of the big problems about it was not knowing how long the tunnel was. You know, I think it's something like, you know, if you've got a jail sentence and somebody says to you, you've got a year in jail, you can you can mark the days off on this wall of the cell. But when it's just open-ended, you have no idea how long it's going to take. That's actually much harder to deal with.
How do you know when you're out of it?
Well, I mean, I think what happened is that we ended up, in the end, with friends and a couple of various human rights groups, actually with a lot of help from Canada, I have to say. We managed to launch a political campaign to get the Iranians to back down, and eventually that happened, you know. And really, frankly, the only threat that there ever was from the Iranian regime. And so once we were convinced that they had actually backed off, then things got better.
So did you go through fear, anger? Did you go
Even all
through
the
a
stages,
gamut?
all
Yeah,
the
talk about that.
Well, I mean, I think what is true is that I wanted to wait to write this book until I'd gone through all that. You know, I didn't want to write a book when I was still in that stage of over-emotional stage, let's say, you know, and I wanted to look back at this period from a better place, you know, and which is why I've waited so long, you know. And now it's kind of great because all these years people have been asking me about this and I've been sort of stalling people, you know. And then it's as if I just threw a switch in my head. I thought, okay, you want to hear about it? Here's everything.
Now's
So,
the time.
here it is. Boom. Here's all of it.
Is
And one of the things that's good about it is being able to talk finally about who helped me, who did what, you know, because there were people who were so generous and big-hearted and courageous and, you know, hard-working on my behalf. And we've all kept that secret for 25 years. You know?
Who were some of those people?
Well, I mean, for instance, here in Canada, you know, Canadian Pen, you know, were fantastically supportive. I mean, my publisher, Louise Dennis at Knopf Canada, and writers here, Michael Ondaatje, many other people, you know, were fantastically supportive.
Would take you into their homes?
Well, I mean, I was never in Canada that long, but yes,
Right.
I mean, I was staying in people's houses. And in England, you know, there were people who would actually move out of there. If I suddenly needed somewhere to be, there were one or two times when I needed somewhere in a hurry. And my friends would actually move out of their house, so you go and live there.
So Joseph Anton was a pseudonym
Yeah.
that you had to use. You took that on.
Well, it was. I mean, it wasn't. It was only used. You know, I mean, my friends didn't call me that. You know, but basically, it was for two reasons. One is that I had to rent these properties. You know, and obviously I had to sign checks and contracts and things, and we had to do that under a pseudonym. So my bank manager knew that was the other person. But the other thing was that the police wanted to train themselves to not use my name by accident. Like if they're running around the block or they're in the local store or something, they didn't want to let my name slip, you know, and sort of blow
There's
the cover.
meaning to it, isn't there?
Well, it was just made up out of two writers. I mean, let's say I took Joseph from Joseph Conrad and Anton from Chekhov and put them together.
Well, it sounds there's something too. It has a nice ring.
Well, I also had this. I always thought I wanted to write a book which had somebody's name as the title. You know, David Copperfield. You know,
Right.
you know, Huckleberry Finn. You know, those are titles. I thought. You know, and ended up with one, and it turns out to be me.
Now, this must be optioned by now, isn't it? These things seem to get optioned as soon as the synapse occurs in your brain.
No, I mean, it hasn't been, but I mean, I think, you know, I'm not even sure about whether I don't know how much I'd like to go see myself being played by.
Who would play you?
No, you know, it's very, somebody asked me this in England, some tabloid journalist, and I said in what I thought was an obvious joke.
Yeah.
I said, well, it should obviously be Johnny Depp because of the close physical resemblance, you know. And so the next day, the tabloid newspaper, Salman Rushdie thinks he looks like Johnny Depp. so don't make jokes.
So you talk about things other than the fatwa. You talk about your marriages, and you've been married 4 times.
4, yeah.
One that people might recognize the name Padma Lakshmi was one of your wives. I wonder, after 4 times, what have you learned? What's the best part? What's the worst part?
What have I learned is don't do it again.
You said you will never get married again.
Well, I think I have 2 children who have strong opinions about that. It's 4 times Dad. It's enough now.
Yeah.
You know?
Would you consider yourself a romantic 4 times?
Well, it must be. Mustn't
Fall
I?
in love quickly?
Yeah. Not quickly, but deeply, I think. You know, but I think 4 is a lot. You know, it's 5 is up there with Jar Jar Gabor. You have to avoid
Liz
that.
Taylor gets
You get very personal in your book about your relationships, whether it's with your ex-wives or your father. Was that hard to do, to bare your soul like that?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, otherwise don't write it. You know, I mean, my view is if you're going to write an autobiography, you have to tell the truth. And I mean, actually, I'm very pleased with particularly the portrait of my father in the book. I thought that was something I really felt happy to have been able to do. And as far as, you know, I mean, I nobody was blindsided. When I talked to people, I talked to Padma, I talked to my wife, my younger son's mother, Elizabeth, and they read it, and actually they said, take this bit out, and I took it out, so on. So I wasn't trying to get anybody in that sense, I mean, my first wife, my older son's mother, sadly passed away, but I wanted him to read, so he was one of the first readers, because I wanted him to feel okay with the portrait of his mother, in the book. And actually, he really was very moved by it, because he said it told him a lot of things he didn't know about our lives before he was around, like when we met and sort of got to know each other and were first living together and got married and so on and so on. So he was very touched by it. So I think that's okay. So he passed, he approved it, But as far as the movie is concerned, the two boys, they disagree. My older son thinks it's obvious movie, and my younger son, who's rather kind of high-minded, thinks, no, it shouldn't be a movie because that'll debase the book, So I told them to just fight it out, let me know.
And you can read the book for yourself. Of course, it's called Joseph Anton. It's just excellent. A memoir. Salman Rushdie, what an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.